What's up, everybody? This is Scott from thelifetimemetal.com, and it's time for another box set update. Once again, a big shout out to Mr. Hall of Fame Brandon from the VC, who has been making these box set videos for quite a while now, and made a suggestion to me to make them. And this is going to be box set video number 3, and this box set video is going to be about the heavy metal box set. That is the name of the set, and this box set is unlike most of the box sets I've shown and he's shown, are not they don't chronicle one particular artist, but rather it chronicles the history of heavy metal. And of course you can see that this box set comes in a little Fox fake amp, and has a little volume knob that does spin on it, and it goes to 11. And you may ask the question, well, why don't you just make 10 louder? Well, of course, because this one goes to 11. Simple. So yeah, heavy metal box set, and this box set comes with 4 CDs that come in a flap holder panel like this. Here's the back, and each of these little plugs contains the name of one of the bands included on this box set. It is a 4-disc box set and 4-disc box set, and overall, I mean, just to give you a clear, before I start complaining about what bands weren't included, they did a great job of chronicling heavy metal from around 1967, 68 through around 1991, 92. For 4 discs, they did a great job of choosing songs and getting it down to only 4 discs. But of course, any kind of box set like this, especially that chronicles that long a period of time of heavy metal, is going to have songs that anybody's going to be saying, where is this band, where is that song? And of course, that's what I'm going to be pointing out as I'm talking about this box set a little bit. But what I want to say though is, what is missing is this minor point, because overall they did a great job. So anyhow, disc 1 starts off in the 60s with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly, Summertime Blues by Blue Cheer, Easy Living by Uriah Heep. So now you're getting into the 70s immediately, and A Highway Star by Deep Purple, $1 Billion Babies by Alice Cooper, Lost Johnny by Hawkwind. So that's kind of the proto-metal, the early years of heavy metal. I think they could have included a few other bands. Jimi Hendrix would have been a great inclusion. Cream would have been a great inclusion. Not that those bands are metal, but they were the proto-metal bands. They were the bands that inspired the bands that came around in the 70s, I also think choosing In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly was a poor choice, only because they used the edited radio version, which cuts most of the song out. So it ends up being like a 4-minute song rather than a 15-minute song. And I would rather they chose a different song than hearing the edited version. But other than that, there's some good inclusions there. Highway Star by Deep Purple, great choice. I'm glad they chose that over, Smoke in the Water. And $1 Billion Babies by Alice Cooper, another killer inclusion. Lost Johnny by Hawkwind, that's an excellent inclusion. So I never would have expected Hawkwind to be in this collection, but it does belong there, and I'm glad it is there. The disc continues with some 70s bands: Bad Motor Scooter by Montrose, Working Man by Rush, Man on a Silver Mountain by Rainbow, Detroit Rock City by Kiss, The Ripper by Judas Priest, which is another fantastic inclusion. Rather than Living After Midnight or what's the other song I was thinking about? Breaking the Law. I mean, you've heard those songs a million times, but really those songs don't represent what Judas Priest was from 73, 74 through 83, 84. It just doesn't. As much as a song like Ripper, which I think is a great inclusion. Where were we? Cat Scratch Fever by Ted Nugent, UFO Lights Out, Godzilla, Blue Oyster Cult. So that represents, a big chunk of the 70s. Big omission for me. I think Led Zeppelin being left out was a huge omission. For what I understand, from what I read online, Zeppelin didn't want to be included because they didn't want to be known as a metal band. Okay, Zeppelin are not a metal band, but they did have metal elements, and they definitely helped inspire tons of metal bands that would follow. And they definitely were considered a metal band in the 1970s, even if they did have their more quiet, acoustic moments and their bluesier moments. So did Black Sabbath. So did all those bands from the 70s. And that's a big point of contention for me. I've argued with people time and time again, on discussion boards on 70s heavy metal, and they claim that those bands are just hard rock, or those bands are just rock and roll, they're not metal. You know what? In 1977, 78, those bands were heavy metal. It was even bands like Queen. Queen would have been another one that could have been included on that disc. And were they pure heavy metal as it is defined now? No. Were they considered heavy metal in the 70s? Absolutely. I have magazines to prove it. I was there. I remember people calling them heavy metal. It was just part of what it was in the 70s. It wasn't such a narrow definition like it is now. And that's kind of unfortunate, but it's kind of funny because by the end of the 70s, media and people were claiming, heavy metal is dead, and disco had taken over, and all these other different punk had taken over, and heavy metal was dead. But magazines like Cream came out, and I pulled this Cream magazine out just to show you, heavy metal back from the dead. And this is 1980, October 1980. This magazine, heavy metal back from the dead. What was it back from the dead from if it didn't exist in the 70s? The fact of the matter is, for there to have been a new wave of British heavy metal, there had to be a first wave of British heavy metal, and that was bands like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, UFO, Budgie, even outside of England, Scorpions, Thin Lizzy, and those types of bands that could have easily been included on disc 1. But like I said, they did a good job of keeping it down to only 4 discs, and you can't include everybody in a set like this. So the disc 1 goes on to start including some of the new wave of British heavy metal bands from the very early 80s. So you got Demolition Boys by Girl School, awesome inclusion. White Witch by Angel Witch. Phantom of the Opera by Iron Maiden. And Neon Nights by Black Sabbath. Great choices, all of them. Like I said, Sabbath could have been included in the early portion, but I'm glad they were included because they are the godfathers of heavy metal, in my opinion. You basically wouldn't even have heavy metal as it exists now if it wasn't for Sabbath. I'm not sure why they didn't include an Ozzy era song, but whatever. Neon Nights, great song. Disc 2 continues with the new wave of British heavy metal. Ace of Spades by Motorhead. Then there's Am I Evil by Diamond Head. Nice Boys by Rose Tattoo. Attack of the Mad Axemen by Michael Schenker Group. Denim and Leather by Saxon. Blitzkrieg by Blitzkrieg, which is a pretty obscure inclusion, but a good inclusion nonetheless. And then you start getting into the more mainstream stuff that was coming out at the time. You got another thing coming by Judas Priest, the second song by Judas Priest on the set. And Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, again, a second inclusion by Maiden. And since Priest and Iron Maiden are two of the biggest metal bands that have ever existed, and still are, I have no problem with that, and think it's probably a wise choice. They were inspirational in the 70s and early 80s, but they were also just as inspirational in the mid-80s. So, anyhow, then we go on to Star Wars by Raven, See What You Will by Fastway, which was a group by Fast Eddie Clarke, who used to be in Motorhead, and I don't know if anybody knows, but the reason it was called Fastway because you had Fast Eddie Clarke, and the band was also supposed to include Pete Way from UFO in the band, but for whatever reason, before the first album was included, Pete Way took off with Ozzy Osbourne, and Fastway was no longer Fast and Way, it just was Fastway. So yeah, history lesson, I guess. Then you get on to you start getting onto some American stuff from there. What else could be included? I mean, tons of stuff. There was just tons of great stuff coming out in the early 80s out of Europe. Big omission for me. Yuli era Scorpions could have been in there. Even in the 70s disc, I forgot to mention Aerosmith. I mean, Nobody's Fault, one of the heaviest songs to come out of the 70s. Easily could have been on that first one. Tons of stuff could have been included, but those are some pretty good inclusions for that disc too. Then they go on with Black Funeral by Merciful Fate, Animal by Wasp, Mean Streak by Y&T, Holy Diver by Dio, Queen of the Reich by Queensryche, and this one ends up with Whiplash, which would be the beginning of the thrash metal movement, which would start in 1983, which is when Kill 'Em All came out, and that's when I was in high school when that happened, and I remember buying that album when it first came out. And as a brand new release, many of my friends were all metalheads, and when Kill 'Em All came out, we were Whiplash was just like jaw-dropping awesome. I mean, you can't get much faster and heavier than that. You had fast songs before that. Fast as a Shark by Accept came out around the same time, maybe a little quicker. Even in the 70s, you had songs like Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith. Fast song, but it wasn't quite, Whiplash. So yeah, so there you go. You got a big span on disc 1 and 2. Disc 3 continues on with the more mainstream heavy metal stuff. You got Rock You Like a Hurricane by Scorpions, Metal Health by Quiet Riot, huge hit in 1983. You know, they were one of the first bands to actually I think it was one of the first bands to actually like chart, you know, in the top 10 in Billboard charts or whatever. And then you got Into the Fire by Dokken, Balls to the Wall by Accept. I would have probably went with a different song by Accept, Fast as a Shark maybe, Restless and Wild, Princess of the Dawn. It's one of those songs probably would have been my inclusion, but still a good song. Round and Round by Rat. I Wanna Rock by Twisted Sister. Now that song I think is a poor choice. You know, it might be one of their more popular songs on pop radio, rock radio, but it definitely doesn't represent heavy metal or Twisted Sister for the majority of their career up to that point. Shoot 'Em Down, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, it would have been, you know, any of those earlier songs, something off Under the Blade, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll definitely would have been a better inclusion, in my opinion. The Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Hanoi Rocks. Now you're getting into the LA, you know, glam metal stuff. Big Bottom by Spinal Tap. Okay, I love This Is Spinal Tap. One of my all-time favorite movies. Definitely was a huge hit in the 80s for metalheads, but should have been included on this? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, the box, it makes sense with the Goes to 11, right? So, Midnight Maniac by Crocus. Definitely would have chosen a different song by Crocus. They had better songs than that. Also, Like Tonight, Ingrid Malmsteen's Rising Force. That's a good song. Crazy Nights by Loudness. Walk and Roll Crazy Nights is, you know, it's a very good song from that era. It kind of has an Accept vibe. Shake Me Cinderella. And then we start getting into some heavier stuff. You got Watch the Children Pray by Metal Church. Little Time by Halloween. And To Hell with the Devil by Stryper, which I'm glad Stryper was included, and it wasn't you know, a sugary ballad, because most people think of Stryper, they think Honestly. And honestly, they had much heavier stuff than that. Surrender would have been a great song to include, but To Hell with the Devil is a good inclusion. So, and then we go on to start getting into the real thrash metal stuff. So you got Wrecking Crew by Overkill. Glad Overkill was included. Caught in the Mosh by Anthrax. Peace Sells by Megadeth. Missing, tons of thrash metal. No Slayer, No Testament. You know, any of those bands could have been included and weren't. So there was just tons of thrash. Thrash metal was just saturating the market in the mid to late 80s and into the early 90s. Even the German thrash metal movement is really not represented there. You know, you don't see any Creator or Sodom or Dokken or what is he, Destruction and Accuser. You know, those kind of German bands that were around at the time are not represented there. So that's, you know, the first 3 discs. Still some good inclusions. Disc 4 breaks it up again. You get more of the LA kind of style, even though this is not an LA band. Whitesnake, Still the Night. Good song, but again, I probably would have chosen something from their earlier career, but I didn't make this collection. I think Martin Popoff had a hand in making this collection. He wrote the liner notes in the booklet. Yeah, Rock Me, Great White, Talk to Me Dirty, Poison. That's one I would have left off. Poison, you're really pushing the line on what is heavy metal, in my opinion. There would have been better choices, in my opinion, right there. Bathroom Wall by Faster Pussycat. Hall of the Mountain King by Sabotage. Great song. Kiss Me Deadly, Lead It Forward. Hail and Kill by Manowar. Trial by Fire, Testament. So now your Testament's getting in there. Now you're getting some of the other thrash stuff in there, but Welcome Home by King Diamond. South of Heaven by Slayer. One by Metallica. So this is your late 80s stuff, and this is your second inclusion of Metallica too. Yeah, I guess Metallica deserves to be in there twice. I mean, they are one of the biggest bands on the planet, even though they kind of took a downward spiral into the pit after Justice for All. Cult of Personality by Living Colour. Okay, now you're into the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and that song, metal, maybe. Youth Gone Wild, Skid Row, Cowboys from Hell, Pantera. Okay, now you're getting into the 90s. Now you're getting into the groove. Personally, that song from Pantera, I think, is a good inclusion. Better inclusion than some of the more groove-oriented stuff from the 90s. I wouldn't have minded if they went off a song from power metal, but I know pretty much Pantera tries to ignore all that earlier stuff. So, and then you've got Beg to Differ by Prong, great song, and Dead Embryonic Cells by Sepultura. Again, Missing, lots of stuff. You know, like I said, the German stuff. There is hardly any German heavy metal represented. And there was tons of great German metal coming out in the 80s. You know, you do have your Accept and your Halloween, but there's no Rage, Running Wild, Gravedigger. You know, there was a ton of stuff coming out in the 80s that was just awesome. On the Noise label, Roadrunner, Road Racer. A lot of that stuff's not included here, but you can't expect all that stuff to be on a 4-disc box set. So what is included, like I said, very, very good box set, especially for the price. It's not a very expensive box set. I believe it's still even available. And as much as I say, you know, these bands could have been included, I think for 4 discs, they packed this thing with some great music. And there's also, as well as the, you know, the box that it comes in, the amp box, there's also this booklet, and I don't know if this will be able to see very well, but it's got a bunch of band logos, and they're all kind of on black, kind of like the Black Album from Metallica. And there's just a thick, thick book. And I'm not going to go through every single, you know, picture in here, every single page, but tons of photos, tons of reading material, and I believe every single song is commented on by Martin Popoff, who is very well known for the books he's written. Yeah, so the book itself is very, very nice. Striper. And the box that comes in is very nice. And like I said, there's some great material on here. So, Accept. So yeah, that's it for this box set edition. Now, you know, let me know what you think. If anybody else has it, let me know maybe what you think should have been included that wasn't included, or songs that you think are on here that shouldn't be on here. Perhaps you think metal didn't start till the 1980s and the 70s stuff should have been included at all, or the 60s stuff for that matter. Let me know. I'd be happy to argue with you. But that's it for this edition, and we'll just sign off now and say, God bless, stay strong.